Some houses are built of brick and stone, others are built out of memories, wounds, and unspoken words. For Ryan Adams, the old family estate was never truly a home, more a collection of closed doors and heavy silences. After years away, he found himself staring at the familiar iron gate, the paint now flaking, the gardens wild and overgrown. He could feel the eyes of the past pressing in on him as he walked up the gravel drive, his old duffel bag heavy in his hand. He remembered the day he'd left. His father's voice still rang in his ears. "You're not cut out for this family, Ryan. Get out." At the time, anger had kept him moving forward, but the hurt had lingered, quiet and deep. Now, standing at the entrance, the air seemed thick with things left unsaid. Ben Carter, the family's longtime driver, spotted him and hurried over, a mix of surprise and relief on his weathered face. "Ryan, after all these years?" he said softly. Ryan managed a small, tired smile. "Life brought me back, Ben. Not sure if I'm ready." Ben squeezed his shoulder gently. "You'll be all right, son." Inside, the house hadn't changed much. Dark wooden floors, heavy furniture, and portraits of stern-faced Adams men lined the walls, judging every step. In the sitting room, his mother Susan sat in a wheelchair, her hands frail in her lap but her eyes warm. "Ryan, you came home," she whispered, her voice trembling between joy and disbelief. He hurried to her side, knelt, and took her hands. For a moment, everything else faded away. Samuel Adams, his father, stood nearby, arms folded, expression hard as ever. Daniel, his older brother, watched from across the room, a knowing smirk on his face. Megan, his younger sister, rushed to him and wrapped him in a tight hug. "I missed you, Rye," she said, and for the first time since he arrived, he felt a little less alone. Samuel finally broke the silence. "So you finally decided to show up," he said coldly. Daniel muttered under his breath, "City boy won't last a week here." Ryan stood, facing them all, the tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. He looked at his mother, then at Megan, and then back at his father. "I'm here now," Ryan said quietly, "and this time I'm not leaving without trying." Even as uncertainty churned in his chest, he knew this was a fight he had to take. If not for himself, then for the only people who'd never truly let him go. Ryan's return to the family home was less a homecoming and more an uneasy truce. After the stiff greetings and his father's cold stare, Megan helped him carry his bag to the old guest room at the end of the hall. The room still smelled faintly of old books and rain. He set his things down and took a moment to look out the window, the same view he'd stared at as a teenager, wondering what lay beyond those fields. Now he was back, but nothing felt easy. Later that morning, the family gathered in the dining room for breakfast. The sunlight slanted across the big oak table, making the dust in the air visible. Susan sat at the head of the table, trying to hide her excitement at having Ryan home. Megan chatted about little things, how the weather had been, the flowers blooming late this year, but the conversation kept tripping over awkward silences. Daniel sat across from Ryan, his every glance sharp and appraising, as if looking for weaknesses to exploit. Samuel read the newspaper, but didn't seem to be absorbing a word. After a while, he folded it with a sigh. "We need to talk about the mill," Samuel said abruptly, his voice gruff. "Business has never been this bad. If something doesn't change, we might lose everything." He glanced pointedly at Daniel, then at Ryan. "You both know what's at stake." Daniel straightened, forcing a confident tone. "We're handling it, Dad. Just a rough patch. The workers are lazy, that's all." Ryan noticed his brother's fingers drumming on the table, betraying a trace of nerves. He looked at his father. "Maybe there's more to it than that," he said quietly. "Maybe we should talk to the workers. Ask them what's going wrong." Daniel scoffed. "And what do you know about running a business? You couldn't even hold down a job in the city." Samuel didn't intervene, and the sting of Daniel's words echoed in the silence. Susan looked at Ryan, her eyes pleading. "You always listened, Ryan. That's something this family could use right now." For a second, Ryan wanted to retreat. Say nothing. Keep the peace. But the disappointment in his mother's eyes was harder to bear than his brother's mockery. He nodded. Let me try, just for a month. If I can't help, I'll leave and you'll never hear from me again. Samuel's eyes narrowed, considering. 1 month, he said. You get a fair shot. But if things get worse, you go. Understood? Ryan nodded. The deal struck. The first challenge set. After breakfast, Ryan walked out to the porch with Megan. The morning was cool, the air heavy with the scent of earth. Megan leaned against the railing, watching him. Don't let them get to you, she said softly. You're here for Mom and for yourself, too. Just remember that. He gave a small, grateful smile. I don't want to disappoint her again. Megan touched his arm. You never did. They just never saw you. Her words lingered as Ryan made his way across the yard toward the mill. The Adams family sugar mill stood on the edge of the property, brick walls faded by decades of sun and storms. As he entered, the sound of machines and the smell of sugar and oil brought a rush of old memories, his grandfather's laughter, the hum of life when things were good. Now, though, the place felt tired. Workers moved with a sluggishness that had nothing to do with laziness and everything to do with worry. Ben Carter was already there, talking to a group of men. When he saw Ryan, his face lit up. Come to see the old place, have you? Ben called out. Ryan nodded, shaking a few hands, remembering faces from childhood. He listened as the men spoke about late paychecks, broken machinery, how the mill no longer felt like family. Ryan spent the next hours walking the floor, listening to every complaint and every suggestion. He made notes in a battered notebook, asked questions, and, most importantly, made no promises he couldn't keep. He noticed things Daniel hadn't: workers buying their own tools, small thefts caused by desperation, fear in people's eyes when Daniel's name was mentioned. As the day wore on, Ryan's determination grew. He wouldn't win anyone over with fancy words or quick fixes, but maybe, just maybe, he could earn back their trust. That evening, back at the house, Ryan found his mother resting by the window, a book in her lap. He sat beside her, silent for a long moment. She finally broke the silence, her voice gentle. It's good to have you home, Ryan. I always believed you'd find your way back. He looked out at the fading light, feeling the weight of her faith and his own doubts. I hope I can make things right, Mom, he said softly. She squeezed his hand. You already have, just by being here. As night fell, Ryan lay awake, listening to the quiet creaks of the old house. He knew the hardest part was still to come, but for the first time in years, he felt the beginnings of hope. The next morning, Ryan woke early, barely rested. A sense of nervous anticipation pulled him from bed long before the house had stirred. Sunlight crept through his curtains, cutting through the gloom. He quickly dressed and made his way outside, hoping to avoid Daniel and his father, at least for now. The dew was still fresh on the grass as Ryan crossed the yard, his boots sinking slightly in the soft earth. The sugar mill loomed ahead, its faded red brick walls and tall smokestack a reminder of better days. As he stepped inside, a handful of workers were already gathering, some drinking tea, others checking machines. The air was thick with the hum of old equipment, the tang of oil and sugar dust. Mike Turner, the mill's foreman, spotted him and approached with cautious respect. Didn't expect to see you here this early, Ryan, Mike said, his tone polite but uncertain. Thought maybe you'd just be here for show. Ryan smiled. If I'm going to help, I need to understand how things really work around here. And I remember you always knew what was going on, Mike. Mike seemed surprised, then nodded approvingly. You're not wrong about that. Ryan spent the next hours with Mike, walking every corner of the mill. He listened as Mike pointed out the broken conveyor belt, the engine that needed parts no one could afford, and the growing stack of unpaid supplier invoices piling up on his desk. At every stop, Ryan took notes, asked questions, and treated even the smallest complaint as important. Word quickly spread through the factory floor that Ryan was different. He didn't talk down to anyone or act like he was above the work. When he saw a worker struggling with a jammed piece of machinery, he rolled up his sleeves and helped fix it himself. By noon, he was sweaty, covered in grease, but for the first time in years, he felt useful. After lunch, Ryan decided to walk to the nearby village. The lane wound past quiet fields dotted with wildflowers. The village had once been closely tied to the Adams family, but now he noticed how many houses seemed empty, how many shops were shuttered. At the small general store, he saw Martin Blake, the village elder, standing outside and chatting with a group of men. As Ryan approached, the conversation quieted. Martin watched him closely. "Ryan Adams," he said, voice gruff. "Wasn't sure we'd ever see you here again." "I wasn't sure either," Ryan admitted. "But I want to listen. The mill isn't working the way it should. I think you all know that better than anyone." One of the men, gray-haired and tired, spoke up. "People don't trust your family like they used to. Wages are always late. When we ask Daniel, he says it's our fault for not working hard enough." Martin nodded. "And it's not just the money. The respect is gone." Ryan nodded, feeling the truth of their words. "Give me some time," he said. "Judge me by my actions, not just my name." That afternoon, as he returned to the mill, Daniel intercepted him by the old storage shed. "So you're playing the hero, are you?" Daniel sneered, arms folded. "Walking around, pretending you can fix everything." Ryan met his brother's eyes, refusing to back down. "Someone has to try." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Dad's giving you a month. Don't think I won't make you regret coming back." Before Ryan could reply, Daniel turned and stalked away. Ryan felt a cold knot of dread, but he forced himself to keep going. Over the next few days, Ryan worked side by side with Mike and the other workers. He discovered that Daniel had cut corners everywhere, laying off experienced employees, buying cheap replacement parts, and even skimming money from the payroll. Morale was low, and trust was nearly gone. Several times, Ryan caught Daniel watching him from a distance, his gaze sharp and unfriendly. Ryan spent his evenings with his mother. Susan's health was fragile, but her mind was sharp, and she asked about everything he saw at the mill and in the village. "People talk," she told him. "They remember your grandfather, how he looked out for everyone. Maybe you can remind them what that felt like." "I'm not sure I'm the right person," Ryan confessed, his confidence wavering. Susan squeezed his hand. "You're exactly the right person. You just have to show them." One evening, as Ryan was returning from the mill, he noticed Megan sitting alone on the porch. She looked worried. "Daniel's been saying things," she confided in a hushed voice. "He's telling Dad you're making things worse, that you're trying to embarrass the family." Ryan sighed. "That doesn't surprise me. He's afraid of losing control." Megan looked at him, her eyes fierce. "Don't let him win. I know you, Ryan. I know what you're capable of." He managed a small smile. "I hope you're right." The days settled into a rhythm. Ryan met with workers in the morning, repaired what he could, and tried to build trust. Some people began to open up, sharing ideas for small improvements. Ben Carter, always nearby, lent his quiet support. At night, Ryan studied the mill's old account books, tracing every lost dollar. What he found made his stomach sink. Daniel had been taking more than his share, and some of the debts were so high it was a wonder the doors had stayed open at all. Tension in the house increased. Samuel became more impatient, snapping at small things, pushing for results that Ryan knew would take time. Daniel was openly hostile now, accusing Ryan of meddling and making everyone soft. One morning, as Ryan was heading out, Daniel blocked his path. "You should just leave before you embarrass yourself and the rest of us," Daniel said. "You don't belong here. You never did." Ryan was tempted to walk away, but Megan's words echoed in his mind. "I'm not here for you," Ryan replied quietly. "I'm here for Mom, and for everyone else who still cares about this place." At the mill, Ryan faced a crisis. One of the oldest machines failed completely, threatening to halt production. While Daniel argued to simply close the floor and send workers home, Ryan convinced Mike and the others to work late into the night, stripping the machine for parts, improvising repairs, and keeping the mill running by sheer willpower. When it finally sputtered back to life, the crew cheered, and Ryan realized it was the first genuine smile he'd seen from them in days. Still, the opposition from Daniel did not let up. Word began to spread that Daniel was planning to fire some of the workers to save costs. The threat of layoffs rattled everyone. Ryan met with Ben and Mike to come up with a plan. He'd try to find a small local investor or offer a partnership to the farmers in the village, something to keep the doors open and avoid more pain for the families who depended on the mill. He spent his nights writing letters, making calls, and even meeting Martin Blake late one evening to discuss ways the community could help. Susan noticed the toll the struggle was taking on her son. "It's hard being the one who tries to fix what others broke," she told him one night. "But you have the heart for it, Ryan. You always did." "I wish Dad saw it that way," Ryan admitted. "He will. Maybe not now, but he will," Susan replied, her faith unwavering. One day, a small group of workers approached Ryan in the break room. Their leader, a woman named Fiona Smith, spoke up. "We heard you're trying to save our jobs, Mr. Adams. People are scared, but some of us believe you. What do you need from us?" Ryan was moved by their trust. "I just need honesty. Tell me when things are wrong. Tell me if someone's being mistreated. If we work together, we might have a chance." For the first time, he felt like maybe, just maybe, the tide was starting to turn. But even as hope flickered, Daniel's campaign against Ryan only grew bolder. He whispered to Samuel about Ryan's interference and questioned every decision. Samuel demanded quick results, growing more irritable as bills piled up. The pressure was immense. Yet through all the doubt, exhaustion, and quiet moments of despair, Ryan held onto his mother's words and Megan's belief in him. By the end of the second week, the mill's workers were starting to look at Ryan not as a visitor, but as one of their own. For every small victory, an old machine running, a supplier agreeing to wait just a little longer, a worker paid on time, Ryan felt a spark of something new, not just hope, but belonging. Still, the hardest days were ahead, and Ryan could feel the storm building, but he also knew he wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in years, he was ready to stand his ground, not just for himself, but for everyone who counted on him. As summer deepened, the atmosphere in the Adams house grew heavier with each passing day. Ryan had found a rhythm at the mill, but nothing about the work was easy. Some days things moved forward, machines fixed, debts juggled, wages paid on time. Other days it felt like every step forward was met with two back. Still, Ryan refused to let the weight of his brother's sabotage or his father's impatience break him. One Thursday morning, Ryan arrived at the mill to find several workers gathered by the entrance, talking in low, anxious voices. Mike Turner was pacing, his brow furrowed. "Something's not right," he said as Ryan joined him. "Word is Daniel told some men their jobs would be cut this week." Ryan's stomach dropped. "We just stabilized things. Why would he threaten layoffs now?" "He says the numbers demand it," Mike replied, his voice tight. "But he's only making things worse." Ryan looked around at the faces of the workers. Exhausted, wary, families depending on them. He shook his head. "No one's losing their job without talking to me first. That's a promise." Later that day, Ryan walked into his father's study, where Samuel and Daniel were in heated discussion. Daniel paused, noticing Ryan. "Dad, this is what I mean. He undermines every decision I make. He's not even part of this business. He just showed up and started meddling." Samuel turned his cold gaze on Ryan. "We need results, not more chaos. Your brother's trying to keep this mill alive." Ryan didn't raise his voice. "People aren't machines, Dad. If you break their trust, the mill will fall apart no matter what the books say." Daniel scoffed. "Don't pretend to know better than the rest of us. You walked out on this family, remember?" Ryan ignored the barb. "Give me until the end of the month. Let me prove that we can get through this without destroying people's lives." Samuel hesitated, but nodded curtly. "You have until the end of the month. No more excuses." Back at the mill, Ryan and Mike gathered the workers in the break room. Sunlight streamed through dusty windows. Ryan stood at the front, feeling the weight of every tired, hopeful eye on him. "I know things are tough," he began. "There are rumors and fear, but I'm telling you now, if we work together, if we find ways to improve even a little, we can keep every job here. No one gets left behind. That's my word." For a moment, the silence was absolute. Then Fiona Smith stepped forward. "What do you want us to do?" she asked. Ryan smiled a little nervously. "Tell me what's broken. Share your ideas. If something's not working, let's fix it. No more secrets." Mike nodded his support. Gradually, the group warmed up, offering suggestions for repairs and ways to save on costs. That night, Ryan stayed late with a small team, working side by side to patch a leaking pipe and recalibrate an old press. Every day brought new tests. One morning, Ryan found that the payroll envelope had gone missing. Tempers flared as rumors spread that wages wouldn't be paid. Mike was furious, searching the mill and questioning everyone. Daniel was nowhere to be found. That evening, Megan found Ryan in the kitchen, his hands shaking with frustration. "I know Daniel's behind this," he admitted. "He wants me to fail, but I can't prove it." Megan reached for his hand. "He's desperate, Ryan, but you're winning people over. Don't let him turn you into him." Her calm support steadied him. The next day, Ben Carter quietly returned the envelope. He'd found it hidden in Daniel's car. Ryan paid the workers on time, and his quiet, determined honesty made more of an impression than any speech could. As the month went on, small successes started to build. A supplier agreed to extend credit after Ryan visited their office and spoke honestly about the mill's struggles. Martin Blake from the village brought a group of farmers who offered to share resources and buy sugar at a fair price if the mill survived. With every handshake and small step forward, Ryan felt a sense of responsibility growing within him. These people weren't just employees or neighbors, they were the soul of the place his family had built. At home, the tension was reaching its breaking point. Daniel grew angrier with each passing day, slamming doors and snapping at Megan. Susan tried to keep the peace, but she was growing weaker, her energy fading. Ryan often sat with her late into the night, sharing quiet moments that felt all the more precious for their rarity. One evening, Susan pressed a faded photograph into his hand. "That's you and your grandfather, the day the mill opened a new wing. He said you had the heart for this place." Ryan traced the image, feeling a lump rise in his throat. "He never doubted you, Ryan. Neither did I." But Daniel wasn't finished. One Friday, as Ryan prepared to meet with Martin Blake and the farmers, Daniel intercepted him in the hallway. His face was flushed, his words rushed. "You're making me look bad. Dad's actually listening to you now. Why don't you just leave?" Ryan's voice was steady. "Because I care about this place, and I care about the people who depend on it. That's more important than any grudge between us." Daniel shook his head, his expression hardening. "If you stay, I'll make sure you regret it." Ryan didn't respond. He simply walked past his brother, determination settling in his chest. The meeting with the farmers went better than Ryan had hoped. They agreed to supply fuel and maintenance help in exchange for fair wages and reliable deliveries. Martin Blake clapped him on the back. "You're more your grandfather's grandson than you know," he said. Ryan felt a surge of pride, but also the shadow of responsibility growing heavier. The real crisis came the following week. Ryan woke to shouts outside the house. Smoke rose from the direction of the mill. He ran as fast as he could, heart pounding. When he arrived, he found flames licking at the old warehouse, workers trying to form a bucket line, panic spreading through the crowd. Mike and Ben were shouting orders, and Daniel was nowhere to be seen. Without hesitation, Ryan grabbed a hose and joined the fight, yelling for others to fetch water from the nearby pond. As the fire raged, Ryan saw Fiona trapped inside, coughing and waving for help. Ignoring the heat and smoke, Ryan plunged into the building, found her huddled behind a stack of crates, and led her out, half carrying her. The fire was eventually brought under control, but the warehouse was badly damaged, and Ryan collapsed on the ground, coughing and exhausted. Later at the house, the doctor checked Ryan for burns and smoke inhalation. Susan, in tears, hugged him tightly. "You saved her life," she whispered. Samuel watched in silence, a strange expression on his face. Daniel finally appeared, blaming the workers for carelessness. Mike confronted him. "This wasn't an accident," he said quietly, looking Daniel straight in the eye. "Someone wanted this place to burn." Rumors began to swirl. Workers muttered about sabotage. Megan confided to Ryan that she'd seen Daniel in the warehouse late the night before the fire. For the first time, Samuel seemed uncertain, glancing between his sons with a troubled look. In the days that followed, the damage seemed almost too much to bear. The workers were scared, the mill's output dropped, and the weight of responsibility pressed on Ryan like never before. Yet through it all, he refused to quit. He helped organize repairs, took out a small loan to cover immediate costs, and stood in front of the workers every morning, refusing to let the fire destroy their hope. Slowly, the mill began to recover. People started talking about the old Adams spirit, the willingness to fight through adversity. Ryan's courage in the fire became a story that spread through the village. For the first time, some of the men who doubted him came to thank him in person. But the rift in the family was now exposed for all to see. At dinner one night, Samuel put down his fork and looked at Ryan. "You risked your life for this place." "Why?" Ryan met his father's gaze, tired but unflinching. "Because it's worth saving. Not for pride, but for all the people who've built their lives here. That's what Grandpa taught me." Samuel said nothing, but the silence felt less hostile and more thoughtful than before. Alone in his room that night, Ryan allowed himself to hope. For the first time since returning, he believed that maybe, just maybe, he was more than just the black sheep. He was part of something bigger, something worth fighting for. The aftermath of the fire hung over the Adams estate like a heavy storm cloud. For the first time, the entire family was forced to acknowledge the reality of just how fragile everything had become. The warehouse was badly damaged, much of the season's supplies lost, and the workers were tense, afraid that this was the end. Ryan spent long hours at the mill, sleeves rolled up, helping to clear debris and salvage what little they could. His hands were raw and his body ached, but he refused to rest while so much was at stake. The insurance assessor arrived, walking the ruined site with a clipboard and a wary expression. "You're lucky," he told Ryan. "If the fire had spread to the main building, you'd be finished. The mill can reopen, but it will take time and money." Time and money, two things they had very little of. That evening, Ryan gathered the workers in the battered break room. The mood was somber, eyes downcast. "I know you're all worried," Ryan said, voice hoarse from exhaustion and smoke. "But we are not done yet. If we work together, if we fight for this place, we can rebuild. I promise you, I'm not giving up, and I'm asking you not to either." Mike Turner put a hand on his shoulder, and Fiona, still recovering from the fire, stood to thank Ryan for saving her life. Slowly, the mood shifted from despair to fragile hope. A few men clapped. Someone murmured, "If he won't quit, neither will we." Back at the house, the tension between the brothers was unmistakable. Daniel avoided Ryan, rarely appearing at meals, spending long hours in town on mysterious business. Megan, worried, quietly started gathering evidence, old receipts, emails, anything that might prove Daniel's involvement in the mill's troubles. Susan grew quieter, her face pale, clearly worried that the family was falling apart. One night, Megan found Ryan sitting by the window, staring out at the moonlit fields. "I found something," she said quietly, pressing a folder into his hand. Inside were records showing Daniel had withdrawn large sums of money just days before the fire, money that was supposed to pay workers and suppliers. There was also a note from one of the workers who'd seen Daniel arguing with a stranger near the warehouse late that night. Ryan's heart sank as he read. "I didn't want to believe it," he said softly. Megan's eyes filled with tears. "You have to show Dad." The next evening, the whole family sat together after dinner, an unspoken tension filling the room. Samuel looked older than ever, his shoulders hunched with worry. Ryan slid the folder across the table. "I think you need to see this," he said. Silence filled the room as Samuel read through the documents, his face growing darker with every page. Daniel tried to speak, but Samuel cut him off. "Is it true?" he demanded, voice shaking. Daniel looked away, then finally muttered, "I did what I had to." "None of you understand what it takes to keep this place going." Samuel's fist hit the table. "You nearly destroyed everything your grandfather built. You put lives at risk, including your own brothers." The truth, once spoken, hung in the air. Daniel didn't try to defend himself further. He stood, his face pale and tight, and left the room without a word. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Susan began to cry, quietly, Megan comforting her. Samuel sat with his head in his hands, silent, while Ryan just stared at the table, feeling the exhaustion of the last week settling in his bones. The next day, Daniel's car was gone from the driveway. Word quickly spread that he'd left town. No one knew for how long. In the village and among the workers, news of what happened traveled fast. Some were angry, others relieved. But most agreed that a new chapter had begun for the Adams family, one where hard truths were finally out in the open. Ryan's days became longer and the burden heavier. The mill still needed repairs, money was still tight, and the scars of the fire lingered everywhere. But he felt something shift. Workers showed up early to help clean up and repair. Ben Carter and Mike Turner became his right hands, organizing volunteers from the village. Megan handled paperwork and legal troubles. Even Samuel, for the first time, came to the mill and rolled up his sleeves. Quiet, awkward, but present. Late one night, as Ryan walked the darkened corridors of the house, he found Samuel in the old study, staring at a photo of Ryan's grandfather. "You remind me of him," Samuel said quietly, not looking up. "He always believed in second chances. Maybe I should have too." Ryan hesitated, then said, "It's not too late, Dad. But we need to do this together." Samuel nodded, a shadow of pride and regret passing over his face. It was a moment Ryan had never imagined. A father and son, not reconciled, but finally facing the same direction. As the family and mill workers prepared to rebuild, Ryan felt hope rooting itself in his chest again. Whatever came next, they would face it as one. In the weeks that followed Daniel's departure, the Adams house and the mill both felt strangely lighter. There was a sense of relief among the workers and in the village, too. For the first time, it seemed possible that the worst might be behind them. Ryan awoke early every morning and headed straight to the mill. Ben Carter and Mike Turner were always waiting for him, ready to plan out the day's repairs. With the village's support, small teams of volunteers arrived each morning, sometimes bringing sandwiches, sometimes just their strong backs. The workers' children painted cheerful signs and banners, hanging them around the site. "We believe in our mill," and "Thank you, Ryan." It warmed his heart to see such simple hope, even as the work ahead remained daunting. The repairs were exhausting but satisfying. Some nights, Ryan fell asleep at the kitchen table, papers and plans spread before him, only to wake to the comforting smell of coffee Megan brewed before heading to the office. Their new sense of teamwork was stronger than he'd ever known. Susan, though weak, insisted on visiting the site at least once a week, letting everyone see her pride and gratitude. Samuel joined too, awkwardly at first, but slowly learning to listen, ask questions, and even lend a hand where he could. The first true test came when a major order was nearly canceled. Without the warehouse, they had nowhere to store or package the sugar. But Megan and Mike improvised a new system using the old barn, while Ryan negotiated a partial payment up front with the buyer, explaining the situation honestly. To his surprise, the buyer agreed, and news of the Adams Mill's resilience began to spread. As the weeks turned into months, production finally reached a level that covered wages and debts. The repairs were nearly finished. One afternoon, Martin Blake came by with several local farmers, all eager to sign a long-term supply agreement. "This place is the backbone of our town," Martin said. "You saved it for all of us." Ryan felt a deep satisfaction. He hadn't done it alone, but he had helped bring everyone together. One Sunday, the family gathered for dinner. It was the first time in years the table felt full of warmth, not tension. Megan joked and laughed with Ryan. Susan beamed at her children, and even Samuel seemed lighter, as if a burden he'd carried for decades had finally slipped from his shoulders. After dessert, Samuel cleared his throat. All eyes turned to him. "I want to say something," Samuel began, his voice low but steady. "I made mistakes. I let pride and fear cloud my judgment. I thought strength meant never admitting you needed help. Ryan, you showed me what real strength looks like. You risked everything to save this family, this home. I was wrong about you, and I'm sorry." Ryan was stunned. The words he'd longed to hear for so many years now felt almost surreal. Susan reached for Ryan's hand. "I always believed in you," she whispered. Megan's eyes sparkled with pride. Samuel stood and, for the first time in Ryan's memory, reached across the table to embrace his son. The gesture was stiff, awkward, but real. The mill is yours now, Samuel said quietly. You've earned it. Ryan didn't know what to say. There was no need for speeches. In that moment, forgiveness and acceptance filled the room. Daniel's absence was felt, but not with anger, more with hope that someday he might return, changed and humbled by what had happened. Megan, always the peacemaker, wrote to him every month, sending updates and invitations to come home. There was no reply yet, but Ryan encouraged her to keep trying. Everyone deserves a second chance, gals, he told her, even Daniel. With the business stabilized, Ryan and Megan launched a new project, a community scholarship fund for workers' children and local youth, inspired by the resilience and hope the town had shown. The first applications arrived before autumn. Fiona's daughter was among them. You changed things for all of us, Fiona said shyly, handing in the papers. Ryan smiled, feeling that, for the first time, he'd truly come home. The village held a celebration to mark the mill's recovery. There were banners, food, laughter, and music. Ryan was the guest of honor, but he shared the spotlight with everyone who had pitched in. Samuel gave a brief, heartfelt speech, ending with, "It's never too late to build something new. We're proof of that." That night, Ryan walked out to the old barn, breathing in the cool, sweet air. Megan joined him, leaning against the door. You did it, you know, she said softly. No, Ryan replied, looking around at the lights twinkling in the distance. We did it! All of us. Susan watched from the porch, smiling as she saw her children together. The weight of the past finally replaced by something gentle and bright. In that moment, Ryan understood that legacy wasn't just what you inherited, but what you built, out of forgiveness, out of struggle, out of hope. And as the stars blinked above the fields and the laughter of family and friends drifted through the night, Ryan Adams knew he was no longer the black sheep. He was home, right where he belonged. A few months later, autumn had come to the Adams estate, painting the fields gold and red. The sugar mill was fully repaired, its walls now gleaming with a fresh coat of paint. Children raced down the lane after school, their laughter echoing across the yard. Ryan often found himself pausing in his work to watch them, reminded of his own childhood, before old wounds and harsh words had driven him away. The scholarship fund had taken off. With Megan's tireless organizing and the support of the workers and farmers, several local kids had already started at better schools. Fiona's daughter wrote a letter of thanks, neatly folded and delivered with a shy smile. I want to study engineering so I can fix things, just like Mr. Ryan. It was a simple note, but it meant everything. At home, the family was settling into new rhythms. Samuel was different now, quieter, kinder. Sometimes he joined the workers for lunch, listening instead of lecturing. Susan's health, though still delicate, had improved. She spent her afternoons in the sunroom, reading or sharing stories with anyone who would listen. Megan was full of ideas, plans for a harvest festival, suggestions for improving the mill, laughter that filled every room. Even Ben Carter, the old driver, joked that the house felt alive again. There was still a place set at the table for Daniel, his absence a gentle ache rather than an open wound. Letters from Megan went unanswered, but hope lingered that one day he'd return, ready to build something new alongside the family he'd left behind. Ryan made a point of mentioning Daniel's name at meetings, reminding everyone that forgiveness was always possible. On a clear evening after another busy day, Ryan walked out to the edge of the fields. The sky blazed orange and purple, the land stretching wide and peaceful beneath it. He felt the weight of the past, but it no longer hurt. Instead, it was part of him, something to learn from, not run away from. As he watched the sun dip below the horizon, Megan joined him. She didn't say anything, just stood beside her brother, both of them breathing in the moment. Ryan smiled. He understood now. Home wasn't just a place or even a family name. Home was what you built and rebuilt, with the people who believed in you. For the first time in his life, he was at peace, with his past, his family, and himself. Winter approached quietly, dusting the Adams estate with a gentle frost. The mill's smoke drifted skyward, a signal of steady work and quiet prosperity. On weekends, villagers gathered at the community center for music, food, and laughter, their voices weaving new stories in a place once haunted by old wounds. One evening, as the family sat together after dinner, Megan handed Ryan a letter. This one different. The envelope marked in Daniel's familiar handwriting. Ryan's heart raced as he unfolded the paper. The words were short but honest. I'm sorry for everything. I need time, but I hope there's still a place for me. Tell mom and dad I'm okay. Ryan looked up, eyes shining with both relief and hope. He passed the note to Susan, whose hands trembled with gratitude. That night, standing beneath the starry sky, Ryan felt the full measure of what had changed. The pain of the past had become the root of forgiveness. Old divisions had become the ground for something stronger. In the house behind him, laughter glowed through the windows. He knew the road ahead would not be perfect. There would always be more work, more healing. But for the first time, the Adams family walked it together. Ryan closed his eyes, breathing in the cold, clean air. The black sheep had found his way home and had made it a place where anyone, lost or wounded, could one day return. The end.